Well, it
But
goes
with
to the old adage, right? It's, helping will sell, selling won't help.
yes,
Right. And that's a really key thing for a lot of folks to understand. And there's something that you mentioned that is also really critical. It's not about, the transactional, it's about the relationship. It's about building a relationship. And we use relationship in a lot of different terms, but it's how do you give them something that they can use without necessarily paying, but then give them, a bit more if they're willing to pay. And how do you figure out where those lines are? And a lot of that comes down to trust. And how do you get people to trust you? And in your case, like, how are you building that trust?
it's a really good question. So I've been fortunate enough where in my career, I led a 30-person sales team for a Fortune 200 company. I had a over $100 million P&L. So I was doing this at like real scale. And I think the kind of key thing that I would say is critical to get right, and I've coached all my kind of people with this key thing, is know when to say you can't do something and know when to say that you don't know or don't have a good answer. That's where trust is built straight away, in my opinion. And it's where we've certainly found with DevLake, where a lot of our success has come in, right? Is making it very clear, like what this thing doesn't do, what it can't do, where it's going to fail you if you do this. That's kind of part one, I think, in building trust. I think part two, in those kind of relationships is really kind of seeking to understand. And that's the other kind of key coaching that I would give to anyone looking to excel in this. And what I mean by that is, if you try to just straight away wedge your solution into what you think you're seeing, you might be right, but more often than not, you're going to be wrong. And you have to understand the underlying why. They've decided to take half an hour out of their day to get on a call to talk to you about an open source data platform. Why? What are the big things they're looking to accomplish? And you have to dig into that to really start understanding, like, what are the underlying motivations? Because it's likely not going to be what you're thinking. And I think you see so many salespeople fail so badly when they come in with a talk track, they come in with an agenda, they come in with their assumptions, they think they know the business, they think they understand the problems, and they probably do on a lot of levels. But if they don't lead by seeking to understand, they're inevitably going to go wrong. And for me, that's where the magic pixie dust has been on all of the biggest deals I've ever done. Is you're digging for the why, especially when you've got multiple stakeholders. You're digging for the why on all levels, right? You're looking at headaches on a day-to-day basis. How can you solve those, and what are the things that are really frustrating them? You're looking at really big picture business things, like what's their company as a whole looking to accomplish this year or next, and how can you play into that? And then on a personal level, right? This is the magic pixie dust, right? Everyone has their own personal goals. And sometimes those can be a little Machiavellian, but sometimes they can be very, wholesome and real. And you want to figure out what that is too, right? Maybe underlying this, like they're saying, hey, I'm looking at this analytics product, but the real reason I'm looking at it is because I would like to figure out how I can become the VP of open source next year. Or I'd like to figure out how I can add 5 people to my headcount that no one's given me the kind of budget to do right now. Or, maybe if you're really speaking privately and candidly with people, they're like, hey, I'm looking to transition to a new job next year, and I'd love to be able to kind of quantify and articulate my accomplishments. And this is something I see as being able to do that. And what I've always coached, my own salespeople to do, and I do think it works, is if you are meticulous about really figuring out, like, what are those kind of day-to-day whys? What's the big picture company why? And then most importantly, and most frequently overlooked, what's that kind of personal why, for each stakeholder? If you can find a way to, in a non-bullshit way, really address those things, it's going to be hard for you to lose. And that begins with, being comfortable saying no, being comfortable saying what isn't possible, what you can't do, winning trust there, and then being someone who's genuinely interested in understanding. Hard to go wrong with those recipes.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, those are two really good pieces of advice. I mean, that trust when you have to like be honest about your product and yourself. I call it the Miracle on 34th Street approach where, I don't know if you ever saw that old movie, the Santa Claus recommends they go to not they're at Macy's, they recommend they go to a different store to get a toy, right? That builds that trust. And that's a great just, clip if you haven't seen it, just to kind of get that. And obviously the solution sale, selling to what is actually the pain, making sure you can articulate. Great
Yes.
advice.